Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today we're navigating the sometimes murky waters of common interest communities. Think neighborhoods with shared perks, green spaces, maybe a community center, all run by a homeowners association, an HOA.
Right, those CICs. And they cover both condominiums and planned unit developments, or PUDs.
Exactly. And they come with that mandatory membership and, the regular assessments for upkeep.
Yeah, absolutely. And for this deep dive, we're really leaning on VA pamphlet 26-7 as our main source.
Okay.
Our goal here is pretty straightforward. We want to pull out the key VA requirements for properties in these CICs, specifically focusing on VA loan guarantees for condos and PUDs.
So really trying to give you, the listener, a clear picture of what the VA is actually looking for.
Precisely. Actionable insights, hopefully.
Okay, let's unpack this then. When a veteran's looking at buying in a condo or a PUD, there are some fundamental things the VA checks first, right? Section 16A in the pamphlet seems to lay this out.
It does. It starts with the basics.
Let's start with the property's title. What makes a title okay in the VA's eyes?
Well, the VA has pretty specific rules here, laid out in the regulations, 38 CFR 36.4350. Mostly the veteran needs what's called a fee simple estate.
Fee simple, that's like full ownership, right?
Yeah.
Land, building, inheritance.
Exactly. The most complete type. Now, there are a few exceptions, but that's the general rule. And importantly, the title shouldn't have unreasonable restrictions on how you can use the place or who can live there.
Okay, unreasonable restrictions.
Yeah, again, with some very specific exceptions spelled out. And they also note that, minor typical title limitations, usually not a problem.
Got it. So a clear, usable title is number one. What's next on the list for all these CIC properties?
The next big one is what the VA calls a superior VA lien.
Superior VA, okay.
Yeah, it's covered in 38 CFR 36.4351 and 4352. Basically, any VA-backed loan, it needs to be secured by a first lien on the property.
First in line.
First in line with very limited exceptions. Now, for CICs, this connects back to those HOA fees we mentioned.
Ah, the assessments.
Right. Those mandatory HOA assessments, they must be subordinate to the VA guaranteed mortgage.
Subordinate meaning secondary.
Exactly. So if, worst case, there's foreclosure, the VA's claim comes before any unpaid HOA fees. It's a protection for the veteran, really.
Makes sense. Protects the VA's investment and the veteran's home from, just those fees causing a loss. Okay. How about valuing these places? The appraisal must be key.
Oh, absolutely critical. And the process is slightly different depending on whether it's a PUD or a condo.
How so?
For PUDs, appraisers use the standard forms. You probably know them. Freddie Mac Form 70 or Fannie Mae Form 1004.
Yeah, the common residential ones.
Right, but for condominiums, there's a specific form, Fannie Mae Form 10073. It's tailored for individual condo units.
Okay, a condo-specific form.
And on top of that, there are specific condo appraisal rules laid out in 38 CFR 36.4360A.
No, here's something I'm curious about. What if a condo building isn't just homes? Like, maybe it has shops or offices on the ground floor.
That's a really good question, and the VA addresses it. If a condo project has commercial or, other non-residential parts, the appraisal has to factor those in.
Oh.
The appraiser needs to explain how those non-residential interests might affect the value of the actual residential units. The VA wants the full picture of the whole project's mix.
Makes sense. Understand the whole environment.
Exactly. And there's another layer if it's a condo conversion.
Like turning an old apartment building into condos.
Precisely. If the original declarant or developer is doing the conversion, the appraisal needs to be, extra detailed about any rehab work. What's been done, what's still planned.
Okay, so they need the history and the future plans for the building itself.
Right. But note, that level of detail isn't usually needed for just a simple resale in an already established condo community. Only for those conversions driven by the developer.
Got it. So once the appraisal's done, the VA issues its notice of value. Does that come with any standard strings attached for these properties?
Yes, it does. The notice of value for both PUDs and condos will typically include some standard conditions.
Like what?
It'll state pretty clearly that the property is in a development with mandatory HOA membership.
Okay, acknowledges the HOA.
And it puts the responsibility on the lender to make sure the title meets VA standards, and crucially, that those HOA assessments are subordinate to the VA mortgage.
Reinforces that superior lien point.
Exactly. And there's an extra condition if the condo project itself isn't fully VA approved yet, or maybe has some outstanding requirements.
What kind of condition?
It basically says the lender has to ensure the whole condo project is acceptable to the VA and that any special conditions or requirements have been met before the loan closes.
So a final check for the lender.
Yeah, it often points back to other sections in the pamphlet like acceptable title, superior VA lien, section 16, days owed to on approvals, chapter 13. It's like a reminder. Hey, lender, do your homework here.
A clear nudge to double check everything. Okay. Are there other rules that apply just to condos, not PUDs?
There are a few key ones, yes. First, there's mention of a presale requirement in the regulations, 38 CFR 36.4360C.
Presale, meaning a certain number of units need to be sold already.
Potentially, yeah. The section itself doesn't spell out the exact percentage, but lenders need to know it exists, especially for newer condo projects. It could be a hurdle.
Okay, something to watch for.
Second, warranty requirements. The rules, 38 CFR 36.4360AD, talk about warranties needed for both the individual unit and the common elements.
Protection against defects, basically.
Right. And third, something about inspections. Wood-destroying insect inspections, termite checks.
Yeah.
In low-rise and high-rise condo units, they're only required if the appraiser actually sees signs of a potential problem.
Ah, so not automatic like it sometimes is for single-family homes.
Correct. It's triggered by the appraiser's observation in those types of units.
Interesting distinction. Okay, so that covers the basic groundwork for all CICs and some condo specifics. Now, how does a whole condominium project get that VA stamp of approval in the first place? Section 16-A.02 goes into these procedures. Who kicks this off?
It's generally the lender, or maybe the project sponsor, like the developer. They're the ones who need to formally ask the VA for approval.
How do they do that?
They need to send a written request to the VA Office of Jurisdiction that covers that area. And along with the request, they have to include a complete copy of the condo's organizing documents.
What kind of documents are we talking about?
Things like the main declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, the CC&Rs, the HOA's bylaws, the articles of incorporation if the HOA is set up as a corporation, all the governing paperwork.
Okay, the legal foundation of the condo.
Exactly. And this is really critical. The VA absolutely must review and approve these project documents before any individual units in that project can be eligible for a VA loan guarantee.
So the whole project has to get the green light first. No project approval, no VA loans for veterans wanting to buy there.
That's the rule, non-negotiable.
Makes sense. So the VA gets this package. What's their process then?
They'll do a thorough review of all those documents. They're checking for compliance with all the specific VA regulations.
Making sure everything lines up with VA rules.
Right. Once they finish that review, they notify the lender or sponsor who sent in the request. But again, it bears repeating. Project approval is mandatory before any VA loan eligibility in that condo.
Okay. Now, nobody likes waiting. Are there ways to speed up this VA approval process? Any shortcuts?
Well, not really shortcuts, but there are ways to make it more efficient. The VA recognizes that other federal agencies sometimes review these projects too.
Like HUD.
Exactly. If a condo project already has approval from HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or even the USDA, the Department of Agriculture.
USDA does condos?
Sometimes, in certain rural contexts, yes. If it has HUD or USDA approval, it's generally exempt from a full, separate VA review.
Ah, that sounds like a time saver.
It usually is. If the lender provides proof, like seeing it on an official approved list or getting an approval letter, the VA typically just adds it to their own national VA approved list, usually without issuing a separate VA approval letter.
Usually. Are there exceptions?
There's a rare one. If the VA happens to find out that even a HUD or USDA approved project somehow doesn't meet a specific VA requirement, they can still decide not to guarantee loans there and will notify lenders. But that's uncommon.
So leveraging other federal approvals is the main express lane. What if a condo doesn't have HUD or USDA approval?
Then the VA strongly recommends including something called an attorney's opinion.
Okay, getting a lawyer involved.
Right. Section 16B of the pamphlet is all about this. Basically, you get a qualified attorney, someone who knows community association law inside out,
Right.
to review all the condo documents and write a formal opinion stating that they meet all the VA requirements.
And that helps because
it significantly speeds things up because the VA can rely, to a large extent, on the attorney's review. Instead of having to meticulously examine every single clause themselves, it reduces their workload.
makes sense. Delegate the detailed check. Any other ways to expedite?
A couple more possibilities. If the documents for the current project are very, very similar to documents for another project the VA has already approved.
Like using a template?
Sort of. The lender would need to include a certification from the developer or their attorney saying, hey, these are basically the same as Project X that you approved. Here are the minor differences. That can help.
Okay, leveraging past approvals.
And finally, if a state agency, maybe a state real estate commission, has certified that the project complies with all the relevant state laws for condos, including that certification can also help streamline the VA's review.
So basically, the more proof of compliance you provide up front, the smoother the VA process is likely to be.
That's the idea. Make their job easier.
So after the VA does its review, what kind of answers can the lender expect?
The VA sends a written notice with their decision. If it's approved, the notice will spell out any specific conditions that still need to be met before they'll guarantee a loan in that project.
Conditions like?
Could be things like making sure all the final documents are officially recorded with the county, or maybe meeting that pre-sale requirement we talked about, or finishing construction on the pool or clubhouse.
Things that need finalizing.
Right. And remember, for those projects approved based on HUD USDA status, there usually isn't a formal VA approval letter, just the addition to the list.
Okay. What if it's not a straight approval?
If the VA finds information is missing or incomplete, or maybe there are deviations from the rules that seem fixable, the notice will explain exactly what else they need.
Oh,
And they'll pause processing the approval until they get that corrected information.
that's not hold.
Right. And then, of course, if the VA decides the project is just unacceptable for some reason, yes, the notice will state why. Sometimes, if the issue is, say, the developer keeping too much control and it's hard to change the main documents, the VA might consider a workaround.
Like what?
Like maybe having the developer sign a separate recorded agreement where they give up those specific objectionable powers. It's a possibility in some cases.
Interesting. Okay, what if changes need to be made to the condo rules after the VA has already approved the whole project? Can they just change the bylaws?
Good question. The VA has thoughts on that too. They actually recommend that the condo's main document, the declaration, should include a process for amendments that requires a high level of owner approval.
Like a supermajority.
Yeah, they specifically suggest needing approval from at least 67%, 2/3 of the unit owners for significant changes.
Okay.
And critically, the HOA has to formally ask for VA approval of any proposed amendment before they go and record it.
Before it becomes official.
Correct. And this is especially true while the original developer, the declarant, still controls the HOA. Any changes to the declaration, bylaws, etc., during that control period absolutely need prior VA approval.
How do they request that?
It requires a written statement from an HOA officer and submitting a specific form, VA Form 26-1844.
Okay. So strict controls on changes, especially early on.
Very much so. Even changes the developer wants to make before the very first unit is sold might need a formal amendment and VA okay.
Wow. But what about planned expansions, like adding a new phase of condos?
There's an exception there. If the project was originally approved with a development plan that showed future phases,
Right.
then adding those planned phases later, according to that VA accepted plan, usually does not require a new round of VA approval just for the annexation itself.
That makes practical sense, allows for planned growth.
Yeah.
Now, what about the banks, the mortgage lenders? Do they have any specific rights within these condo associations, according to the VA?
Yes, the condo documents can, and often do, spell out certain rights for the holders of first mortgages on the units.
First mortgage holders, so the primary lenders.
Exactly. Though usually, the lender has to make a formal written request to the HOA to actually get these rights recognized for their specific loans.
What kind of rights are we talking about?
Things like requiring the HOA to get prior written approval from a certain percentage of first mortgage holders before doing major things.
Like what kind of major things?
Like deciding to completely abandon the condo status legally, or partitioning or subdividing units or common areas, making big changes to ownership percentages, or making, really significant amendments to the core legal documents.
So lenders get a say in fundamental changes.
Potentially, yes. They might also be entitled to get timely written notice about things like eminent domain actions affecting the property, or if there's substantial damage to the common areas, like from a fire or a storm.
Keeping them in the loop on major events.
Right. And they often also have the right to examine the HOA's books and records, receive copies of the annual audited financial statements, and get notice of, and even send a representative to association meetings.
So the VA ensures lenders have some oversight and aren't kept in the dark. That seems prudent. Now, Section 16A.03 in the pamphlet is just a big table of required documents for getting that condo approval. Can you give us the gist of this table?
Sure. Think of it as the master checklist. It lists out all the specific documents the VA office needs to actually review to approve a condo project. It ties directly back to those approval procedures we talked about.
The ones in 16A.02.
Exactly. And you have to read the footnotes carefully. Some documents are needed only if applicable, or only if the declarant is still in control, or specifically for condominium conversion projects.
So the requirements vary a bit.
They do. And the last column is important too. It tells you if the VA will accept a draft version for the initial review, or if they need the final officially recorded version. That's especially key if loans have already closed in the project.
Right, need the final docs then. What are some of the non-negotiable documents usually listed, the ones needed pretty much always?
Well, for almost any new project, or even existing ones seeking VA approval, you absolutely need the declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions. The CC&Rs.
A big one.
The big one. And the bylaws for the homeowners association. If the HOA is incorporated, you'll also need the articles of incorporation. Drafts are usually okay for the initial look at these.
Okay, CC&Rs, bylaws, maybe articles.
Right. And if it's a complex project with like a master association and sub-associations, what they call umbrella projects, you need those core documents for the main umbrella association too.
Makes sense. Layered projects need layered documents.
And they always need the project map, the plat, or air lot survey showing the layout of the whole project. And if relevant, a similar map just for the specific unit being financed.
The visual layout.
Yeah, and for new projects or where the developer's still in charge, they'll also want the overall development plan and schedule, the information statement or public offering statement given to buyers.
The sales brochure, essentially.
Sort of, but the legally required version with all the disclosures and the standard form of the deed or lease that's used to transfer ownership.
Wow, that's quite a list already. What about financial stuff? Or operational details?
Oh yeah, that's definitely in there. The HOA's budget is required whether it's proposed for a new project or the current one for an existing community. And for the budget, they generally want the final version, not a draft.
The actual numbers.
Right. Same goes for current financial statements and info on the HOA's reserve funds, if they exist. The VA wants to see the actual statements.
How much money they have set aside for future repair.
Exactly. They also require a statement about any special assessments currently hitting the owners, or if the HOA is involved in any significant litigation. That needs to be current info.
No hidden costs or lawsuits.
That's the idea. Plus, they want to see the official minutes from the last 2 HOA meetings.
See what's actually being discussed and decided.
Yeah. And one more specific one. For condo conversions, where the developer is still involved, they need a statement from a registered architect or engineer about the building's condition. And that also has to be the final signed report.
A professional assessment of the physical state.
Okay.
Then there's that other category in the table. Submit as available. What's that about?
These are documents that might not be ready right at the very beginning of the approval request, but the VA absolutely must have them reviewed and approved before they will actually guarantee any loans in that project.
So essential, but maybe come a bit later in the process.
Exactly. This includes things like the final recorded versions of those core documents, declaration, bylaws, etc.
The official copies from the county records.
Right. And for projects built in phases, the recorded annexation document for the specific phase the unit is in, proof that the phase is legally part of the condo. They also need solid proof that any promised recreational facilities, the pool, the tennis courts, whatever, are actually finished, and that the title to all the common areas has been officially handed over to the HOA.
No lingering developer ownership of the common bits.
Correct. For conversions, they need confirmation that the utilities serving the site are adequate, and proof that the title to those common areas is free of any mortgages or liens against the developer.
Clean title for the shared property.
Yes. For high-rises, low-rises, and conversions, they often need evidence of final sign-off from the local building authorities and sometimes a final VA inspection of the project itself.
Final checks and approvals.
And lastly, the lender eventually has to certify that any pre-sale requirement the VA set has actually been met.
Okay, confirming enough units are sold or under contract.
Right. And just to reiterate, for almost all these submit as available items, the VA needs the final, official, often recorded documents. Drafts won't cut it at this stage.
Got it. That table really lays out the paper trail needed. Now, let's circle back to that attorney's opinion we mentioned, Section 16B. Given all these documents, I can see why the VA encourages it. Remind us why it's so helpful and what needs to be in it.
Yeah, as we said, the big benefit is speed. It helps the VA process the approval faster because they can rely on the attorney's specialized review.
Saves them time wading through documents.
Exactly. And Section 16B is very specific about what this opinion letter needs. It has to be formal, on the law firm's letterhead, signed and dated by the attorney with their name and title.
Standard legal letter format.
Right. And it must cover 4 main things. 1, clearly identify the project. 2, list exactly which documents the attorney reviewed. 3, state the attorney's qualifications. And 4, provide the actual legal opinion on compliance.
Okay, let's break those down. Identification of the project, what details are needed there?
They need precision. The full legal name of the condo project, any marketing name it uses, the complete address, street, city, county, state, zip.
Pinpoint location.
Yeah. If it's a phased project, the opinion should say so. Mention the approximate number of phases and identify them. It needs to clearly state which units and common areas are in the first phase being submitted.
Defining the initial scope.
Right. And if later phases are already recorded, describe those too, or point to an exhibit with that info. And importantly, if it's part of a bigger master or umbrella association, the opinion needs info on that too. Is the master association recorded? What's its general scope? How many sub-associations might eventually be part of it?
So understanding the whole structure, if it's complex, very thorough. Okay, second part. List of documents reviewed. What goes there?
It has to be an exhaustive list of everything the attorney examined to form their opinion. Minimum requirements are the declaration, CC&Rs, with all its exhibits.
Exhibits like maps or plans.
Exactly. Legal descriptions, plats, development plans, anything formally attached or referenced. Also the HOA bylaws, the articles of incorporation if there are any, and that public offering statement or information brochure given to buyers. The core governing docs, plus the sales info.
Right. And crucially, if there is a master or umbrella association involved where these owners will be members, the attorney needs to list that they reviewed the same set of core documents for that master association as well.
Covering all levels of governance. And examples of exhibits should be noted too.
Yes, the opinion should clarify what kinds of things are included as exhibits in the documents they reviewed.
Okay, third requirement, statement of qualifications. What's the VA looking for here?
They actually provide suggested language or want something very similar. The attorney needs to formally state that they have experience practicing real estate law specifically in the jurisdiction, the state or locality where the condo project is located.
Local expertise.
Yes. And they also have to attest that they're familiar with all the relevant laws and regulations governing HOAs and condo associations in that jurisdiction and that their knowledge is current as of the date they're writing the opinion.
Basically proving they know the specific rules that apply.
Precisely. It gives the VA confidence in the attorney's assessment. Makes sense. And that leads to the fourth, and maybe most important part, the actual opinion itself. What does the attorney have to give their professional opinion on?
This is the core. They need to state their opinion on several key compliance points. First, do the main organizing documents, declaration, bylaws, articles, comply with the specific VA regulations listed? 38 CFR 36.4356 through 36.4360 AG.
Checking against the VA rulebook.
Exactly. Second, do they comply with a broader list of other technical VA requirements found in Exhibit A of this same chapter? We can touch on that exhibit later. It's detailed.
Okay, more VA checks.
Third, do the documents comply with all the material requirements of the relevant state and local laws governing HOAs and condos? And they need to name the specific state local laws they checked against.
So federal VA rules and state local rules.
Correct. And if the attorney finds any areas where the documents don't comply with any of these requirements,
Any problems?
they must clearly identify every single deviation or failure to comply. Since the VA usually can't approve non-compliant projects, fixing these typically means recording formal amendments to the documents.
Highlighting the issues that need fixing.
Yes. Also, if there's a master association, the attorney can optionally provide a separate opinion just on that master association's compliance.
Okay. What else in the opinion?
They have to state if any special conditions exist.
Special conditions like?
Like if it's a condo conversion, or if the HOA owns the water sewer system, or if there are rules restricting sales to, say, low-income buyers, or if it's designated as housing for older persons, like a 55-plus community.
Acknowledging unique circumstances.
Right. And if any of those exist, the attorney needs to explain the setup and confirm it meets VA requirements. Same for mixed-use projects with commercial space. They need to detail the setup, the percentage of non-residential use, and the voting rights involved.
Explaining any non-standard setups.
Exactly. And one last point. If the opinion is based on draft, unrecorded documents, then before the VA will guarantee the first loan in that project, the lender must submit the final recorded documents plus a certification from the attorney confirming either nothing significant changed or explaining the impact of any changes made between the draft and final versions.
So a final confirmation based on the official documents.
Absolutely essential.
Wow, that attorney's opinion is incredibly detailed. It really does highlight how much weight the VA places on it for streamlining approvals. Now, Section 16B also mentions some standard assumptions the attorney can make and some standard limitations on their opinion. Can you briefly touch on those? Keeps the scope clear, I imagine.
Exactly. It sets boundaries. Attorneys are generally allowed to make certain standard assumptions, like assuming the documents they were given are complete and accurate, that everyone who signed them had the legal authority to do so.
Basic legal assumptions.
Right. That the documents don't violate other agreements or court orders, that the HOA and developer are properly set up and in good standing, that no one secretly amended the documents they reviewed.
Things they can't independently verify easily.
Pretty much. They can also usually assume the main declaration is or will be properly recorded, that the copies they got are true copies, and that financial info provided is accurate. They should list any other specific assumptions they're making too, for transparency.
Okay, standard procedural assumptions. What about limitations? What do attorneys typically say their opinion doesn't cover?
Also important for clarity. They usually won't give opinions on subjective things, like whether a rule is reasonable or fair. That's often a judgment call, not pure law.
Sticking to the legal compliance facts.
Right. They also typically exclude opinions on compliance with local zoning, subdivision rules, building codes, health and safety stuff, or whether all the permits were correctly obtained during construction.
So not a building inspection report.
Definitely not. Their opinion usually doesn't cover the day-to-day operation of the HOA either, or laws from other states, or complex tax or securities laws. And critically, it almost never covers title issues like who actually owns the land, or if they're existing landians. They assume the developer has good title.
Focusing purely on the condo HOA governance documents against VA and local law.
That's the main focus. And they always state the opinion is as of a specific date, and they have no duty to update it later if laws or documents change, and you can't infer things beyond what the opinion explicitly states.
Setting clear boundaries on the scope and time. That makes sense. Now, you mentioned Exhibit A earlier, the list of other VA requirements that the attorney's opinion needs to invest. You said it was detailed. What kind of things are in there?
Oh, it's very detailed. Exhibit A is basically a deep dive into the specific clauses and provisions the VA expects to see within the condo's declaration, its bylaws, and the articles of incorporation. It also covers things related to the public offering statement, limits on developer reserved rights, and rules about restrictions on alienation, which is selling or leasing.
Okay, so it breaks down requirements document by document.
Yes. For the declaration, for instance, it lists requirements for, well, everything. Precise legal description of the property, clear definition of common areas, mandatory HOA membership, how voting rights are allocated.
Voting is key.
Absolutely. Including limits on the developer's vote and how long they can control the HOA, how directors are elected and removed, how the documents themselves can be amended, often needing higher votes for big changes.
Like that 67% you mentioned.
Right. Things like easements for access and utilities, who's responsible for maintaining common areas, how the budget's adopted, and assessments are collected.
Including that crucial subordination clause for the HOA lien.
Yes, that's specifically required. Also, enforcement procedures, minimum insurance the HOA must carry, what happens if the place needs rebuilding after disaster, parking rules, specific rights for mortgage lenders.
The mortgagee rights we discussed.
Yes, even things like party wall maintenance and townhome-style condos, rules for phased development and annexation, and how the whole condo regime could legally be terminated. It's comprehensive.
That's just the declaration section. Wow, what about bylaws and articles? Similar level of detail.
Pretty much, yeah. For the bylaws, Exhibit A details requirements for how HOA meetings are run, board meetings, owner meetings, quorum rules, how often owners must meet, the specific powers and duties of the board, how directors and officers are elected and removed, if not in the articles, rules for giving proper notice to owners, and requirements for keeping and allowing access to HOA records.
The operational rule book.
Essentially. And for the articles of incorporation, if the HOA is incorporated, it covers things like clearly stating the HOA's purpose, confirming mandatory membership, defining voting rights, outlining election removal of directors, again, if not in bylaws, and the procedures for amending the articles or dissolving the corporation itself.
The corporate charter basics. And you also mentioned other considerations in Exhibit A. What's that bucket cover?
That covers a few important areas. One is the content of that information brochure or public offering statement VA has specific requirements about the disclosures needed there, so buyers are fully informed.
Ensuring transparency for buyers.
Exactly. It covers the HOA structure, voting, budget, common areas, services, maintenance, restrictions, insurance, parking, potential liabilities, everything a buyer needs to know. Another big one is limitations on the developer's reserved rights.
Rights the developer tries to keep.
Yeah, like maybe trying to keep control of the clubhouse indefinitely, or giving themselves special leasing rights, or the unilateral right to change rules. The VA restricts these to ensure the developer eventually hands over real control to the owners.
Preventing unreasonable long-term developer control.
Right. And finally, limitations on restrictions on alienation. This means the HOA documents generally can't have things like a right of first refusal, where the HOA gets first dibs on buying a unit, or requiring invasive screening or prior approval of buyers or renters if those rules are considered unreasonable barriers to selling or leasing.
Protecting the owner's right to sell or rent their property reasonably freely.
That's the idea behind it.
It is incredibly clear from all this.
Yeah.
The VA has built a really, really detailed framework. It's designed to protect veterans and the VA loan program when dealing with these complex community structures. And Exhibit B, you mentioned, just links to the online regulations.
Yeah, Exhibit B is basically just a pointer. Go here for the official current condo regulations on the VA website, because rules can change. That's always the definitive source.
Good tip. Always check the source. So, bringing this deep dive toward a close, it's just undeniable how thorough, maybe even intricate, the VA's requirements are for these common interest communities. Condos and PUDs especially.
It's a lot to track.
It really is. And understanding these regulations is just, well, vital, both for lenders originating VA loans and certainly for veterans thinking about buying in one of these places. You want that process to be smooth and compliant.
Absolutely. And using resources like the VA's list of already approved condo projects can be a huge help.
Definitely saves some legwork. And as we spent a good chunk of time on getting that legal help, that attorney's opinion, seems like a really smart move in many cases.
Highly recommended, especially for non-HUDIS DV approved projects. It addresses so many of these detailed requirements up front.
Yeah. You know, what strikes me through all this detail is the VA's clear effort to balance the benefits of living in these communities, the shared amenities, the structure, with the absolute need to protect the veterans' financial interests and the integrity of the whole VA loan program.
It's a complex balancing act they're performing through these regulations.
It really is. Which leads to a final thought, a question maybe for you, our listener, to ponder. Considering the sheer level of detail, the granularity of these VA rules for CICs, what do you see as the biggest potential long-term benefits, maybe even protections, for homeowners using a VA loan in these communities? And on the flip side, what might be the biggest challenges or hurdles created by such specific requirements?
That's a great question to think about, the intersection of community rules and federal loan requirements.
Definitely something worth mulling over. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.